Now, a Brisbane councillor has compared the plight of the city protesters with those in Hong Kong. Seriously, activist action in the CBD has escalated with another demonstration against these new protest laws. Anna Rawlings is at State Parliament in Brisbane. Anna, there was chaos in the city again this morning. How is this ever going to be brought to an end?
That's right, Chris. Around 100 protesters marched through the CBD. They finished here at State Parliament this morning after causing a couple of hours of chaos for commuters during peak hour. The protest only just went ahead as well. It did go through court yesterday. The Greens councillor leading today's march just narrowly won that final hour bid after the Brisbane Lord Mayor and Brisbane City Council as a whole had tried to stop it going ahead, saying it would be disruptive. But it was allowed to go ahead. Now, there were also suggestions that the Lord Mayor has written or is going to write to the Queensland Premier, as the state government is in the midst of this crackdown on protests that have been locking down the city for weeks. But the Lord Mayor is apparently going to suggest that there's a block or a ban on when protests are held, effectively trying to stop them from happening during a peak hour. Now, the Greens councillor leading today's march has said if this was to go ahead, it would be chilling. Take a listen.
I think the suggestion that the government should decide when people protest and what they get to protest about is utterly ridiculous and needs to be rejected wholeheartedly. Of course, protests are going to be a little bit disruptive. That's the nature of a healthy democratic process. We've seen what's happened in places like Hong Kong. We know what happens when dictators get ahead of themselves, and we don't want to head down the same road here in Queensland.
Now, the councillor also says that their group repeatedly suggested or offered to walk or hold their protest down the Queen Street Mall instead of through the city streets. They said they repeatedly spoke about that during mediation in court yesterday, but the Lord Mayor and Brisbane City Council turned that down, so they went ahead with their march through the city streets. Now, their actions have been condemned. The Lord Mayor has criticised the group. He's called them extremists, but another MP who was part of the march says that the government needs to take a look at their crackdown. He says they're going too far.
For us to wind back decades-old protest laws that were hard fought and won at the end of the Joe era, that's extreme. Ignoring the kinds of catastrophic consequences of climate change that we will see, that's extreme. Showing up to have your voice heard at a protest, that's the least extreme thing of any of that.
Now, these sort of demonstrations that we've seen causing chaos on the streets have mainly been held by climate change activists and groups against Adani. They have been using locking devices to secure themselves to roadways and block intersections, and that's what one of the major new policies from the Palaszczuk government is about. They're given police new powers to effectively search and seize people and vehicles who they suspect may have those locking devices. So that was one of the laws that were really at the centre of today's protest here in Brisbane. Chris.